And I think, and I think, and I think, I think we're live.
Still,
I
yeah, as of now, yeah.
it hasn't caught up with us yet, although I wonder sometimes.
Yeah, although we did discuss how it doesn't help to be the person that has the track shoes in this particular case.
That's true. That's true. You have to do more than outrun the other person to get away from this one. Yeah, the COVID is able to multitask in that way. So how's California today?
I really ought to look. It wasn't too good last night, and I was feeling discouraged because certain things looked like they were turning over a bit. And now, it's just hard to tell because, of course, we don't know what is happening today. We only know what was happening 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, and I actually do we now that data are no longer being sent to the CDC, who knows what's happening?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I'm not
Yeah, I mean, it
sure
was
what to
already
do with
bad enough
that.
by not having some standardized place in which to put it, and you have to go and collect it from different sources.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy indeed. It is crazy indeed. And hey, John, there's somebody out. We've got John is out there. We've known John for a long time as we get this thing going. John is a yoga teacher, Bikram yoga teacher. Back when you could say Bikram and actually say Bikram and not have to then do this. I guess what do you call it now? Do you just call it hot yoga now or whatever? But
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
we used we used to do that thing, and John was laid back as a yoga teacher, even as yoga teachers go. Although when you're talking about this group, I guess that's the wrong, Bikram yoga teachers, of which our daughter, Patricia, does that.
Yep.
She is such a thing. And actually, if you look at that group, they really are quite often more like, concentration camp commandants or drill sergeants or something like that. So John being laid back is actually a good thing. So yeah, California. How's the comet? Have you gotten out and seen it yet?
Yeah, absolutely. We went out and went on a little camping expedition to go see it where you can see it by eye. I mean, you have to like avert your vision a bit, but it was beautiful out there. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter was, and all the what I've always thought was so much fun is the little nebulosities and star clusters that actually seem like they're coming out of the spout of Sagittarius.
Yeah,
I did get eaten alive by mosquitoes, but other than that.
yeah. Well, that's okay. Everybody has to have. I think as we've talked about before in our family, it's Janice. Our oldest daughter. We just bring her along and we plop her down there, and then the mosquitoes go to her, and the rest of us are basically okay. So she's just sort of a not. You don't need to take along any.
Oh yeah, no
any of the
candles or
scented
anything.
candles or anything like that. You just plop Janice down there, and you're in good shape. Yeah, we I the last couple of nights we've not been able to see it because we actually have storms. We
Oh,
have seen real storms. We've not actually gotten rained on seriously. But
are they
yesterday,
causing any fires or anything from the
no,
lightning?
this we actually yesterday there was a storm not that far from us that rained, and it was the first time in the area that we've seen real honest to goodness rain for 100 days or something like that, reminiscent of when Susan was like 3 years old. We were in Southern California, and she came running in one morning and said, "Mommy, Daddy, there's something wrong. The backyard's all wet." And she had not seen rain in long enough that she had forgotten the existence of such a thing. So anyway, all right. So oh yeah, John says, got me blushing here. St. Louis, University City. Indeed, Washington University is an interesting city. I actually got into a bit of a altercation is the wrong word. There was somebody in the business department at Washington University who early on posted this video claiming that COVID was all just a fake, and that really there were only virtually no one was susceptible to it and it wouldn't hurt you and all of this kind of stuff, who knew precisely nothing of what she was talking about. And it was kind of fun because kind of fun. Uh, she put together this video, and I forget who it was, but some kind of right-wingish wacko paper picked it up and it went viral. And so I actually picked up the phone. I put together a video about it, and then I picked up the phone and called her dean. And it had been a very long time since I had had opportunity to chew out a dean, but I still remembered how to do it. Anyway, so kids, social emotional. What about your kids?
Well,
what have you seen about their social emotional needs in school and that stuff?
I think particularly the youngest one, who's just at the age where he's just started high school. And so, and especially with three really lively older brothers, he's really losing his opportunity to, to make the kind of friends that last a little while, to get some independence, learn how to talk to teachers yourself, and just to be, to kind of be the person that's answering the questions or the person in charge. I mean, not that he always is, but it doesn't happen a whole lot when you have three older brothers in the same space.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that he is doing more online gaming things. I mean, quite often they play the boys play things together, and that's not so bad. But yeah, I'm feeling like I'm seeing less of him in some ways because.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and Joe says somewhere there's a business professor who bears the skid marks of being run over with facts. I actually don't know that that's true. I think to bear the skid marks of being run over by facts requires that you acknowledge that such things exist. Once upon a time, I would have said that yes, that someone would bear those skid marks, but Lord knows with what we've been going through in this country now for going on 4 years, being punched in the, there are certainly people who have amazing resilience to being punched in the face with reality anyway.
And the fact that populist leaders are not doing well in this is because facts are not something those are something you try to go after them with bug spray and push them back into the corner.
Yeah, if there's a silver lining to COVID, well, actually it's possible there's several silver linings to COVID, but certainly one silver lining to COVID is that it is proving to be very, very difficult to make go away by getting people on Fox News to say it's supposed to not exist.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad to have to ask the question, how many people have to die before a Republican acknowledges that there is such a thing as objective reality? But,
of course, it's already a huge number. It reminds me of the Jacob Marley with his ponderous chain, that he's talking about, that's hanging from Scrooge, and he doesn't know it. I mean, it's just like huge chain of things.
So I have been watching this. It's been interesting. I do notice that, who was it? Was it I forget, the American Academy of Pediatrics or whatever it is that have been pointed to. They put out a thing talking about how important the social and emotional aspects of school is, and how it's very important that we open and so on and so forth. And Trump jumped on it, I guess, and said, look here, even the pediatricians say we're supposed to open regardless. And they came back.
But of course, they're two different things, as we are going to discuss. There's the social, emotional, and health of your children, and then there's opening schools.
Yeah. And in fact, I was happy to see that they came back and very strongly backed away from what had been, sort of taken to be their original position on this thing. Sort of saying, no, we meant that after you were sure that you weren't going to kill a lot of people. No, this is the first thing we'd better do. And so, yeah, it's like, first of all, it's clear from history that Betsy DeVos has zero credibility on this score.
Mm.
The idea that she actually cares about kids, we've figured out that that's a non-starter for a long time. But
a lot of people do and are very confused. So,
but a lot of people do and are very confused. And the social emotional health of kids is important. In fact, it's really kind of, what do they call it? Maslow. What's the proper way to pronounce Maslow? Maslow?
I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, the
Lots
hierarchy.
of things I know from reading and haven't heard anybody say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a fun thing. They say that if you hear somebody mispronounce a word, that proves that they're smart, because it's a word that they learned from reading rather from hearing it pronounced somewhere. Although
I'll go with that one.
There are two possibilities. Either they're smart or they grew up somewhere where that is actually how they pronounce the word.
Oh, well, yeah, of course, I was just completely surprised by why is it aluminium, but it really is spelled that way in the UK. It's not just they like to stick extra random syllables in there.
Yeah. Well, for me, growing up in Oklahoma, which is a fine place to be from with a strong emphasis on from, there were a lot of them. Wash, for example, you put your clothes in the washing machine. And I mean, I'm not picking on Oklahoma in particular, because every place has its strange words.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember seeing on a laundromat when I was a little kid, seeing it, wash, and asking my mom, why did they misspell wash? Another one, oh God, what was it? Somehow people did bizarre things with American too, but I can't remember. Oh, no, not American. United was United States. So I grew up sticking the extra N in there until somebody had to tell me.
Oh gosh, I don't think I've ever heard that one. So
yeah.
So you must have reformed.
I
changed or something.
I hope so. Somewhere along the line. So anyway, yeah, anybody in education, they beat them about the head and shoulders with.
And pretty much everybody is in some sense. So it's important to everyone, and I think that's one of the things people sometimes tend to forget, is that it really is.
Although there is a flip side to that, because everyone has spent so much time in classrooms over the years that everybody imagines that they actually know about education. And it's just having sat through a class is not the same as actually knowing something about education.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my teeth cleaned, but I'm not a dentist. So.
Exactly. And so the realities, and that makes it hard, because everybody imagines, well, I know what it should be like. Well, no, actually, probably you don't. Although one thing that's going to come out of this is, I suspect that there are going to be a whole bunch of parents who have a very different thought about teachers and what teachers go through and
their responsibilities,
and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, how are kids going to feel when their teachers start dying? That's a very good question. How are they going to feel when grandma dies? That's another good one. But anyway, so the centrality of social, emotional, I drop a coin in the slot and I'll head off talking about the evolutionary underpinnings of our social connection. I was talking about Maslow. They talk now about really Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just incorrect. The right thing that you should do is you have to say, okay, sitting here at the center of what it is to be human are our social connectedness, and that everything else is arrayed around that.
Well, and the power of the social connection is something that's really seen with the lengths to which people will do harmful or weird things to prove that they belong to a group. So that's a different subject, but it just shows how high that bond is rated.
Yeah. In fact, there's been some really fascinating work on that, talking about believing completely wacko things as social signaling. That if you want to signal to your group that I really am one of you, the wackier the stuff that you will say, I am going to sincerely believe this thing that's crazy to prove that I'm one of you, which explains a whole lot when you start scratching your head about it. Anyway, but yeah, so that is absolutely central to who we are. Kids need it, especially kids who face particular challenges are, schools are important in that regard. And yet, so what do you hear somebody say, but my kids really, really need school. Or if this kid has to be here for another 2 days, I'm going to brain
and I say that the child really does need school, or it needs something that has that that connection. But the problem, of course, is that what you want to do and what you can do under the circumstances are somewhat different. I mean, if you're going to send your child to, what do we want out of school? Is it school if when you have to go, you can't really talk to anyone? You must sit still in a plexiglass booth. You must wear a mask. You must not, talk loudly. You must not run around. That becomes a pretty frightening environment, and especially if everyone is looking confused and you don't have a lot of trust in what's going on. It's definitely not a stable situation. Even the people that are doing well and will open up, the almost inevitability of something going wrong means that it's not a safe and stable environment that you're trying to reintroduce children into.
Yeah, but how? Can you get inside the head of somebody? How is it? We have been following this closely, and it's just sort of, it's not even a question. Anybody who tries to open up a school this fall, it's going to blow up in their face.
That's why we're pretty much not talking about it at this point, because there is no question that, especially here in the United States with the numbers we have in the community, we actually can't do that. So you have to take that off the table, and that doesn't mean that, and don't throw money at solutions which are not going to help at the minute. It doesn't mean it's not going to cost us trouble and money and time. But I think one of the things is that if you take that, I must open in 2 weeks off, just blow that one off the table altogether and calm down. You do have a bit more time. Nobody ramps up the first or second or third week of school with, even in a university, you tend to go to your first class and get a syllabus. We have a little time to work out some of the problems we're going to have.
We have all the time in the world. In a certain sense, because we have no choice.
We have no choice.
This is not something that's going to go away anytime soon.
We'll be very, very fortunate, just because of I'll let you do that, but you probably want to talk about, just even if we stopped everything completely at this point, the time constant is long enough that it takes quite a while to get the numbers well down again. It just can't happen before the spring. And we'll be lucky if it does then, because we would have had to do everything right.
You're talking like one of them damn scientists. Although you remember the thing early on, I forget who it was, but somebody just looked at this thing and did a curve fit to it and used a cubic, and we're going to scare people off here, but said, oh, look at that, if I just fit this curve to it, it's going to go boom. And it's like, no, it's not.
Why? What would make it do that? It's a little bit like those stories of the tree leaning over, and if you chop it on this side, it'll magically flip that direction. It just doesn't happen. But we don't want to get too let's kind of maybe take it for granted. We really do care, and we really, we really want kids to have a learning experience. But if we stop and think about, well, what is it we want them to have? It's totally okay to learn patience and public health and the ability to take care of each other and and how to use the internet. I mean, those are perfectly okay things to learn.
Well, yeah, I mean they are, but yeah, I want to go back and not quite leave the decay yet. That really is kind of a fun thing, the geek in us. That if you look at all the places that have gotten COVID under control, and if you just look at them, the shape of the curve as it's coming down. Actually, I guess I should do it this way so that it looks right for the people who are looking at me this way. It goes up and then it comes down. The shape of how it comes down is always the same shape, and it is exponential decay.
Yep, and that's Korea, New York, France, everywhere.
Yeah, you start, and in the case of, and in fact, they all have pretty similar timescales. That, you look at New York and you wait, you say, okay, we're going to start here at the peak, and you wait for about 2.5 weeks, and you've come down halfway. And you wait for another 2.5 weeks, and you've come down halfway. And you wait for another 2.5 weeks, and you've come down halfway. And if you look at where we are right now, I mean, we are talking about Arizona. Just at the moment, I did a little back of the envelope calculation, and I think that right now they're probably something like 150 times more likelihood that somebody in Arizona is currently contagious with COVID than somebody in Germany. Which is when people say, oh, they've got their schools open in Germany. And it's like, yeah, okay, so think about that. And to get from where we are, if we were to shut down as tight as they shut down in Germany, then, or New York or wherever, again, it tends to be about the same time scale. And I'll just pick a nice round factor of power of 2 number out of off the top of my head. Let's say 128, that we're 128 times worse off than Germany is. Okay. So in about a half a month, we could take that down to 64. In another half of the month, we could take that down to 32. And and so, okay, 128 is what, 2 to the 6th?
6.
2 to the 6th? Yeah. 512 is 2 to the 8th. 256 is 2 to the... No. 256 is... Yes. No.
Oh, yeah. 2 astronomers are sitting here going, oh, what's 2?
Anyway, the point is, I'm sitting here and saying, okay, now which one of those is the sign bit? Anyway, the point being is that if you do that, you say, okay, if we were to shut down the whole damn country as tight as New York shut down, and then assume that things tailed off in exactly the same way, then it would take us months, something like 3 or 4 months to get from where we are now down to the point that we could say, all right, we can sensibly do the kind of stuff that they're doing in Europe. And of course, we're not going to do that. There's no way in hell we're actually going to shut down the way that we should shut down. We never have. We
never
didn't have. No.
At the first either. I mean, there were pockets, but we did it all together.
Yeah, New York. We have places right here in the United States that we can.
And for a while here in the Bay Area, but it didn't stay.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, this is going to be with us for a while, and I will be honest, my guess is that it's just going to stay really, really lousy until, let's hope that we've got somebody else in the White House come January, and that maybe after the first of the year, we'll get serious about trying to do something about this thing.
But in the meanwhile, it's going to take you longer and longer to go down the steps to get back down to.
Right.
And the area under the curve is not nothing. The area under the curve is people.
And the area under the curve is people. That's actually a thing. We have been pushing hashtag my COVID story, that I guess is starting to catch on at least some places. The idea of getting people to talk about this, not as just numbers, but as real, honest to goodness impact. But so anyway, what's going to happen long term? John chimes in with vaccine best chances scenario. That what it's going to take to get to the point that we can live with this thing really is we're going to have to do, eventually, hopefully we will have a vaccine. Realistically, that's not going to happen for another fair part of a year. Even if, there's some very promising trials going on right now. The likelihood that everybody in the country is going to be vaccinated before next summer is slim. And so what you have to do is you have to really shut things down, and you have to get the numbers down to the point that we look like something like Germany. And then at that point you say, okay, people need to wear masks and we need to worry about not getting too close and those sorts of things. But then you can start opening up, and as long as you're smart about it and you can contact trace and you can keep it under control in that sort of way.
You're getting the data, and you're realizing that there's a big lag between people catching something and people appearing in the data, so that you have a big blind spot.
But anyway, kind of back to the promised topic. Since kids are not going to be in schools,
and if they are, they'll be home soon. And we don't want to say that. It's dictating that that's what's going to happen. It's like I dropped a rock and it's not going to float. So
it's like, yes, if drinking Clorox would really kill COVID, then sure, we should all go drink Clorox. But it just doesn't work that way. And again, saying so on Fox News isn't going to make it so. And so the fact is that we have no choice. We know social, emotional, their kids at risk. They depend upon schools for all sorts of things.
Their parents depend upon the schools as well.
Their parents depend upon the schools. Let's be honest, an awful lot of the people who are saying that they want schools to open really could care less about the social and emotional health of kids. All they want is to say, we've got to open the schools because schools are childcare, and we've got to get those people back out there and crack the whip and back to the business of making coin for the folk in this country who benefit from people making coin. But in the schools, the reality is that kids are going to be out of school. Kids are going to be remote. And so what is it? If I just ask you, social, emotional, what is it that kids need?
Well, they, like human beings everywhere, they need connection. So probably the best thing one can get at it is to try to build preferably small groups of connection that involve parents and a teacher and the kids. So and that if we build connections and trust, that's not a lost cause. It's an incredibly important thing, which will certainly carry forward into a physical building. I think it would be great if part of what it was about was chatting to one another to do something to calm people down. And by the way, your friend might appreciate, I was listening to someone talk about how they were being very careful not to call it breathing exercises. Breathing is kind of scary at the minute for a lot of little kids. We've had the I can't breathe, and we've had the breathing troubles, and you're supposed to pay attention to COVID and stuff. So people are trying to think of other ways of calming people down. But Jeff, I know it sounds pathetic, but kids are actually really frightened.
Yeah,
so it's not funny. So it's one person described that when they were having that, they had the child lie down and pretend there was a little bird on the tummy, and that they were just making the bird rise and fall, and while it was cheeping gently. But I can see why you have to.
I am going to say that we're now on territory where every now and then I just turn into an old hard ass. Damn it. It is called breathing. Okay. The air goes in, the air comes out. That is called breathing. You know, it's respiration is a thing. Okay.
I mean, mine wouldn't be that way, but I'm just trying to be sensitive to somebody might be. Okay. But I suppose if you discovered they were, then you just calm them down when you see it. But anyway, yeah.
John says, take a deep breath as a trigger freaking crazy time. Yeah, I think that's really. John, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly right.
We should change the name of this thing from Scientists Stuck Inside to freaking crazy time. Yeah, freaking crazy. Maybe we should do that. That would work. Freaking crazy.
Yeah, we're not totally stuck inside, although probably we ought to be, but no, that's not what's going on at the minute. So, anyway. You ask leading questions, but probably there's something you actually want to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, you put a coin in the slot. Joe says, "You're triggering me, dude." We ought to get Joe on here and let him participate in the conversation here in a minute. Joe, you want to join us for a few? See if he's actually listening.
I'm just typing in some words.
Silence. He just said, "Joe, you're triggering me, dude," and now he's being completely silent. Oh no, I can't do that. But yeah, I mean, the things that kids need. First of all, my strong sense is that if we do what it is that people say they want to do, you know, you look at things like the CDC guidelines, which are minimal. I mean, actually, the CDC guidelines as they stand now.
Yeah, and minimal as they are, they're pretty nearly impossible.
Minimal as they are, they're pretty near impossible. And Joe says, sure. Okay. So let's figure out how to make this happen. Yeah. They are pretty nearly impossible.
And as I say, they're kind of frightening in themselves. So if you're talking about an environment where children are being able to learn, they're going to be a whole lot better off if they're in their home and their home is pretty safe. And we'll address questions where it isn't. But in terms of disease to be trained to learn and be as we know, children of that age are simply not capable of maintaining that kind of constant alarm. Just you can't function that way and still actually learn anything in your classroom.
Okay, now here is a question. Can I actually here?
You might have. I guess you probably have to send him the invite, but
there you go, Joe. Of course, we just sent it to the whole world. So the whole world, which is a very small number of people, they're a small handful. We really do have to figure out how to promote this thing because we have enough fun that
I mean, the idea is this is the kind of thing scientists always do. At the end of the day, you go out and I would usually do the iced tea or the beer, and you just go and hang out hang out and chat.
Hey, Joe. How are you doing?
Hi, Jeff. I'm wearing my shades because I'm incognito.
Oh, man.
And I don't want...
This man clearly spent some time in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah.
I heard you got some problems with some viruses there.
You know any good Sicilians that can take out viruses for us?
I do, as a matter of fact, Jeff. Okay, I've got a window open that's on a delay, so I'll just bear with me for a moment.
Okay, all right. I do like the sunglasses, though.
Oh, I'm bringing them back.
Okay, all right, good. Although you look very, I mean, you're here with these. That works too.
There we go.
Very properly.
There I
But
look
no,
professorial.
you look at it, and yeah, John Knox says, "Who is this guy?" John, I have known Joe actually for much longer than I have known you. Believe it or not, Joe
Jeff's my parole officer
Yeah, I was his parole officer once upon a time.
in graduate school.
That's right. He
Advisor.
Joe actually did his PhD with me. So and he these days is actually off shaping the minds of young people
With facts.
with
And critical
facts,
thinking.
which is right now a little bit disturbing, but that's okay.
That's why I'm wearing the sunglasses so my employers don't see me.
Yeah, actually, should I tell my favorite Joe story? Joe,
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, Marcia says
should.
hi,
You should tell
Joe.
it.
Should I
Hi,
tell my
Marcia.
favorite Joe Foy story?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I've actually told it to classes that he has taught over the years as well when I have visited them. I was teaching a graduate course in interstellar medium, and for those out there who are not science geeks, we were doing something like time dependent perturbation theory that day.
I remember
something
it.
like that.
I'll never.
Well, I mean, it was anyway, which is sort of a very mathematically rigorous thing, but you then connect that to real things that you see in the world. And there were maybe 10 people in class or something like that. It was a small class. And I looked down, and there's Joe Foy, and Joe Foy has his head planted on the desk. And he's there asleep. And he had a bit of a reputation as being somebody who tended to sleep through classes. And so without breaking stride, I just said to everybody, you weren't in that class, were you, Jerry?
No.
That was after your time. Anyway, I looked down and there's Joe, and I just said to the class without breaking stride, okay, everybody should notice that Joe Foy is asleep, but he's not deeply asleep. He's clearly deeply enough asleep that he's not paying any attention whatsoever to what I'm saying, because I'm standing here talking about him and he's not doing anything. But he is aware of the cadence of my voice. And so as soon as that changes, he will notice that there's something different and he will wake up. So I would like everybody in class to stare at Joe Foy. Okay, everybody's staring at Joe Foy, and then I'm just gonna stop. So 1, 2, 3, and then I just shut up. And Joe's there, and then he kind of raises his head and looks around, and everybody in the place is staring at him. And I have never seen anybody go so completely red so quickly in my life.
And my students love it when Jeff tells them this story in the classes I teach.
Yeah, it's always fun. Yeah. See this guy up here? Yeah.
Yep.
But, okay, Joe, I'm gonna, we're talking about social, emotional, and kids and all of that kind of stuff.
I don't have kids.
You don't have kids. I know you don't have kids.
Cats are getting frustrated.
Your cats are getting frustrated?
They're tired of being inside.
Our dogs love it.
Yeah.
Our dogs are the families here. What's there to complain about? Dogs are pack animals, and they're the ones who actually have their pack right now, I suppose.
Yes.
But as someone who is not a parent, then I think probably these days that makes you an expert about this. I don't know. Does Betsy DeVos have kids?
I haven't the
Poor
fog yet.
things. Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
I'm serious question.
Yeah.
Does she? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I do know that H.L. Mencken and Theodore Dreiser, both of them lifelong or nearly lifelong bachelors, one of whom never had kids and the other of whom abandoned his family to become a novelist, apparently wrote a kind of mock baby care book that they did kind of like The Onion, right? And apparently people took it seriously, and there was an indignation. The committee of Daughters of the Confederacy or whatever, went after them. I don't know. I mean, she certainly has zero credibility. And although I don't have kids, I do teach 18-year-olds, and I share you and Jerry's concerns about, especially in elementary schools and the kind of more open environments. And you're talking about very young people. And yes, I understand the social stuff's important, but Lord, how are you going to even if getting them to wear masks would work in that kind of environment, which I don't think it will, not because masks don't work, but boy, I just don't see getting, I'm worried enough about 18-year-olds university this fall. They're nice kids, but you put a bunch of 18-year-olds in a dormitory and guess what? It's a petri dish.
Yeah.
Well, and also if you've got the teachers worrying so much about, did somebody sneeze on someone? Did they wash their hands? They're not able to teach and take care of the emotional
Exactly.
and social care of their children. If you have a coherent online program, which you've particularly if you've broken it into small groups, it maybe includes singing songs and that sort of stuff. I mean, you can actually go ahead and focus the teacher's attention on actually teaching and support, which is an incredibly important thing in such a difficult time, because I think people should remember that we're not trying to hibernate through this. I mean, we might wish we could, but indeed, we actually want our children to understand it, to know what works and what doesn't work, and actually, hopefully come out of it with a stronger sense of what you can, what you have control over and what you don't.
And I mean, what comes to mind, to be perfectly honest, when you think about, okay, we're going to have a bunch of kids, and to not be a spreading center. And by the way, we now know, I don't know if you've seen this, Joe, but we now know what happens if you just open classrooms in the midst of this thing, because it happened in Israel.
Oh yeah, I've been following a little bit of that.
Oh man, there was,
it's just insane.
Yeah, and it really is just, we very recently found out how beautiful an experiment it is, if beautiful is the right word. For those who don't know, Israel came down, they got, nation of 9 million people thereabouts, and they got down to 50 cases a day or something, and said, oh, this is wonderful, let's open up. And then 2 weeks later, it started doing this, and at least the last time I looked, it was still doing that. And so, all right, they opened up and it blew up, but they actually know more than that, because they were doing tracing of cases as it blew up. And when it blew up in the early days, clearly the dominant source of infection was coming out of schools. And we now know there was a study out of South Korea of, how many was it? Something like 30, I forget the number, 30.
I think it was 30,000. That's the number that sticks in my mind anyway.
Some number like that said, yeah, absolutely, kids get this thing, kids pass this thing along. So those questions are answered. Despite, although again, I'm picking on Betsy DeVos. She was talking about, oh, look at these studies that show that kids can't transmit this stuff. Yeah. And she was looking at these very small studies, or she was looking at, hey, there's a classroom in Germany where nobody caught it or whatever. Yeah. And you talk about cherry picking irrelevant data. Oh man.
Yeah, let's quote numbers that are coming out of New Zealand that would be really, really applicable to California at the minute.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. New Zealand, they've basically declared that it's gone down there, haven't they? I mean, they're essentially zero,
what's interesting, one of the things that's interesting is that even there, they're trying to get their own citizens back, and they're trying to quarantine them. And sometimes they sneak out to buy a beer or something. And so adults do not do
yes.
You're not even getting adults to do this, let alone the fact that children just cognitively cannot do this. So yes,
but I mean,
you have to make it better at home.
What I'm trying to think of, we started off saying, yeah, kids, the social emotional thing is important, and it is. And I mean, if you really get into talking about at-risk kids and such as that, this is a very, very serious.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're laughing about a lot of stuff here, but that's because I know for a fact that all three of us turned to Gallows humor when the need presents itself. I mean, hell, I know you guys from graduate school, and if
Yes.
ever there is a time in your life when gallows humor is what you need to turn to, you know, as
Yep.
the saying goes, it's not a job, it's an indenture.
Well, that's there's grad school, and my grad school experience was quite pleasant compared to, I'd say, 90% of grad students. It was, in fact, it was smashing until my wife showed up and decided it was time for me to finish my thesis. And to stop taking extra courses just because I thought it would be interesting to learn about, I don't know.
Oh my, yeah, actually. Joe, so yeah, we could just throw away this whole COVID thing, and we could all go break out a beer, and then we could tell people about the realities of what graduate school is like, and probably save a whole generation a lot of pain.
Don't do it, kids.
And if we
Don't
really
let
want
this
to kill
happen
people,
to you.
yes, if we really want to kill people, we could start talking about why that video that I posted the other day of Hitler trying to learn electromagnetism from Jackson was so funny. But anyway, we're not going to go there. Wasn't that funny?
Jerry, I have a quick question for you. This is from Arizona. My wife and I are coming to LA for a few days. We got an Airbnb in Venice Beach, and we're bringing masks in hand. And my wife's a pharmacist who knows all about safe practices. Any advice, since we're coming from the frying pan into the fire, in terms of COVID cases?
Ooh, the places where people are being particularly, I'm sorry, I'm going to say, it's not resistant, it's really dumb about mask wearing, tend to be more in Orange County. So maybe don't go there. I mean, I don't
know. That's where the beaches are. That's where you go scuba diving.
I'm going to be in LA, but I'm afraid. I mean, I've got tons of masks, and I got tons of sanitizer and gloves. I'm a big glove.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I think it's an interesting choice of destination, but yeah.
It's going to be 71 degrees. That's part of even if I just stay inside all day, I'm going to be happy.
Why don't you just go up to the White Mountains or someplace? And
we already did that.
It's beautiful. And, yeah, do it again. We did too. Great.
Too late. We already booked the Airbnb. But Jerry, thanks for the advice. I'm going to assume the beach is not a great place to go.
Well, some of them are certainly going to be less crowded than others, and you might, you might be able to do some research about. It's just Venice Beach is not going to be less crowded than others.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, I'm going to sit inside and drink pina coladas.
What I have been thinking about doing, and I may do this yet and get somebody at a distance to film it as I do. But just start going out in public wearing a scuba tank and regulator and mask.
Oh yeah.
And just find one of the stores populated by people who think that if you wear a mask, you really deserve to be taken out and hung as a commie or whatever. And just go walking in wearing.
It's a good example. Around here, we have somebody that wears the mask and things and a big hoop skirt that's wide enough to keep people 6 feet away.
There you go.
That's good.
I clearly need to try this. But anyway, back to the classrooms.
We're not sticking with this.
Yeah. I just have this picture. I am comparing two pictures in my head, and I'm going to throw out there that I think we have not spent nearly enough time thinking about how the remote learning thing could be done well. For example, I've been playing with the idea of, suppose that you have a virtual cohort. So you've got a class, teacher has a class of 30 people. She splits those 30 people into 5 groups of 6 or something. Those 5 groups of 6 are now virtual cohorts along with their families. So that, the parents are now talking to each other online as well. The kids are working together in a virtual cohort. The teacher can interface with that cohort of kids and can also be there to help out the families. You could even, actually, Joe, you're sitting here. I should toss this one out for you. I think that it would be really interesting to figure out a way to give gen ed credit to someone who took real time to be an outside person working with a virtual cohort of kids. So that you could have, you could have a class, and here we've got a class, and this class is split into virtual cohorts. So maybe there are, five virtual cohorts. And then you have 5 college students, each of whom are working with one of those cohorts. And in turn, they form a cohort, and, that cohort is now part of a university course, which is being overseen by somebody at that level. And they're getting gen ed credit for it.
I think that would be absolutely terrific. I just want to say a quick word before I turn it back to you and Jerry. I taught online this spring for about 5, almost 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I teach a seminar style class where we discuss books and such. And I actually found there were advantages to it. I think that really gets to your point, Jeff. And I love this cohort idea. I might even suggest it to the folks upstairs and see if they listen to me. That we haven't really thought as critically as we should about online learning, because it's a different kind of learning. It's a different kind of teaching. And everything's changed except the way we think, as Einstein once said about atom bombs. Anyways, that's my thought. I agree. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And in fact, one of my real frustrations, and I have kind of fallen into the position of being somebody, I spent a bunch of time yesterday, for example, talking to board members from several different districts, superintendents, and I've been talking to teachers unions and so on and so forth about this stuff. And my frustration is that there is so much attention being put to, well, are we going to open up face-to-face, or are we not going to open up face-to-face? And, online isn't good. If you could take all of that good creative energy on the part of good people, get really good teachers, get really good, the mental health professionals, social services professionals, so on and so forth. And instead of having everybody sit around and bemoan the fact that we're not going to be opening schools face to face, instead get them to start talking about, all right, how could we really do this remote learning thing right?
And you've hit an important thing, which is lacking on every level, is that not every school district should not have to do this for themselves. If we're doing something online, you can pull expertise, you can pool appropriate material, and then the teacher doesn't have to do that part. You don't have to have 12,000 different platforms. I mean, it's more cost effective as well. And then we can focus on the fact that there are 2 things going on. There's the remote learning, and there is the child care, because that is actually very important. People have to have somebody to supervise them, somewhere to go. Parents need to have resources too. But definitely the idea that, as Jeff says, people who really care about it are really talking hard about it. But it doesn't have to be every little group has to figure it out separately.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
It never waste a good crisis. And if you step back and say, okay, what are the opportunities of the moment, as opposed to, what's god awful wrong with it? What are the opportunities? If you walked in normal times and said, hey, why don't we do this thing where all of the kids stay home and do virtual learning, and we take several months and figure out how to do that as well as possible, so that we'll see what can be done. You would never actually arrange to do that experiment. Okay. Well, we are now going to do that experiment. So let's make the most of it.
And I know to try to embrace the idea that that's actually a pretty good experiment. We might even be able eventually to at least get like outside activity in association with it. But instead of doing the experiment to see how many people can we cram in our hospitals, let's experiment with how this percolates through schools when there's a high community involvement. Let's do the other experiment. I think that, it's even much more cost effective if that's what you're after.
Yeah. I mean, the opportunities there, like I know in Mesa, where they've actually, there have been folk there who have been trying to think along good lines. There are interesting things going on there, in fact. But for the online part of it, they've said, okay, we're going to use, what is it, the Florida Virtual Schools package or something like that, which is supposed to be very good. I know that that's also what the Gilbert district here is using. I'm not sure about other districts. And then they also have Canvas. Does ASU still use Canvas?
Oh yeah, actually, we just started this past year. Before that, we used Blackboard, so we've just been using Canvas for a year.
Okay.
And some of the UCs use Canvas as well.
I think it's versus Blackboard. I don't say. I frankly, it's pick your poison.
Pick your poison. Both of them have this. But the point being, as I look at that from the standpoint of somebody who's trying to teach, K-12, it's like, okay, the Florida Virtual Schools thing is actually providing scope and sequence. And the fact that lots of people keep settling on it probably says that there's something reasonable about it. So there's a lot there that's good. You have Canvas to provide help with a lot of the administrative end of things.
Yep.
Which means that now you really have done something about scope and sequence, so that when the kid gets to third grade, maybe they do know something about what happened in second grade and actually are preparing for what they're going to wind up with in fourth grade, which is important. But maybe more important now is that you don't have every teacher in the world having to try to figure out what their base curriculum is, so that now the teachers can put their time into saying, okay, what are the project-based things that we can be doing? And now I've got the time to actually spend time with this cohort and that cohort. And I'm guessing that if anybody ever figures out how to do this virtual cohort thing, that when we finally get past COVID and have people going back into schools again, there will still be virtual cohorts, because it's going to turn out to be such a powerful tool. Their school is never going to be again what it was. We're in the process of inventing what education will be.
And it's as you say, it's a great opportunity to do so. And the idea of involving parents so that they can support each other seems to me like an absolute winner for what we do eventually.
Yeah. So, okay, Joe, how would we, let's talk turkey. If there were a school or a district or some group of schools or something who were interested in saying, we're going to experiment with having virtual cohorts, and we're going to have college students that are interacting with those virtual cohorts, and the teacher, in the way that I was talking about there, getting some gen ed credit for it. Who would you approach? How would one make that happen?
That's a good question, because the obvious answer in the context of ASU would be the Mary Lou Fulton School, because that's where a lot of stuff involving education, where many of the teachers are credited from. That would be the first place. Now, if
everybody. I know you.
Knowing me, I probably start with my dean, who was a professor at Swarthmore for 23 years, and was best friends with the person from whom my parents rented a house. So probably I'd start.
Is he aware that he had to compete with Swarthmore to get you, or at least according to a letter?
According to a certain letter of recommendation that was written for me, yes.
Yeah, Jerry, he might not.
Aware.
When I wrote the letter for Joe to get the position at Barrett, I had previously written him a letter of recommendation for Swarthmore. And of course I did what everybody does. And that is, you just write the letter and then you just recycle it. And inadvertently, the letter that I sent to Barrett still said that I think that Joe would be really great for your program at Swarthmore.
The most famous example I can think of that is a bank in England sent out something that was going to go to really some of their heaviest investors, and the person forgot to change the field that said "Dear Rich Bastard." So yeah, we're way off the subject.
Oh,
Yeah. Be careful. It's like I never hit reply all. If I have to, I practically break out in a sweat. So
yeah.
But anyway, one of the comments below the line is about like university students not participating because you can get the recorded course. I mean, that certainly is an issue, and especially if you happen to be in India or something, I can see that you have a good reason for it. But most classes do also involve a discussion section, and the discussion section could be for credit. So
yeah,
and I think this gets back to what, I'm sorry, what Jeff was saying and what you're saying is that we really need to rethink our way of education. You think of students who can access the MIT lectures that are made publicly available, or it's a whole new world. The Khan Academy is trying to do things. And we're just at the beginning of it. And really kind of the older models, the kind of 19th century German model where the brilliant or not so brilliant, but pseudo pedant stands in front of the classroom and, does his thing or her thing. That model is going away in ways. And I think the universities, Jeff and I have had this conversation, so de voce, let me put on my shades. Michael Crow, this is not me. I think as much as I give President Crow credit, I think he does try to be innovative. I think he does get like, oh yeah, things have to change. You can't have an Ivy League model. But I think things are really need to change in a more radical way. I think universities really are behind the curve in terms of innovation about how education at the higher level is going to change. And I'll get off my
I think we're intending to have a discussion that's really about that. That the university has become kind of a trade school in many ways. That and it would be nice to get back to a different thing. I mean, for my sophomore, he's about to start his junior year, and he's a math and computer science guy, and he isn't finding that classes are terribly challenging. So we've told him that given that you have to be home and therefore we're saving some money on living expenses. If you can find a course anywhere in the world that's what you want to take, let's see if we can supplement what you do with that course. So we're trying to take advantage where we can, but we don't have a place.
It's interesting with all of the attention that's focused on opening K-12 schools. Both some of that attention being good attention that comes from we care about these kids, some of that attention being, oh God, we have to have childcare, and after all, that's what schools are for, is childcare. But the schools that actually, I think, are having their business model pulled out from underneath them right now are universities. I think higher education is under a far greater existential threat than K-12. Because like you're saying, once you realize that, okay, so I could in principle take courses from anywhere, and and I could put together the degree that works for me, then why in the world am I going to pay $50,000 a year or something? In fact, I may have had this conversation with one of the two of you or both at some point, just independently. If I were properly entrepreneurial right now, what I would be doing is I would be setting up a company, an organization that essentially said, okay, you want to do this, and so you're going to take these online courses from there and these online courses from here, and you're going to do this work experience, and you're going to, here's this fellowship that you're going to do, or lab experience or something. And what we will do is we will take all of that and we will put it together in a portfolio that really reflects what it is that you've done. And we will then say, all right, this is the equivalent of a degree in X, where X may or may not be a standard thing. But yeah, this is the amount of work that you would expect to have been done working on a college degree. It's diverse. It is properly practical where it needs to be. It is sufficiently general. This is a person who has we're talking about proper liberal education here, where people have taken in a wide range of things, and then you give you your degree. And in that kind of a model, and how is it that maybe there are people out there who right now are putting together that kind of a thing? At that point, the brick and mortar university kind of stops making sense in a lot of ways. And since we're already at the point where people are going off to the brick and mortar university and coming out the other end with a huge debt and a degree that doesn't actually get them a job that allows them to pay off that debt.
Right.
As universities become less and less of the thing that provides you the in into the economy in that way, which is what most people are looking for. How does that university survive?
And of course, it's being this sort of a la carte way means that it's always fully modern, because some of the trouble is that a perfectly reasonable course syllabus type of thing for a chemist 20 years ago might not be what it should be now. And if you still have some things hanging on from that, those are classes that a child or a person is working hard in and are not necessarily giving them the result for the modern world that they need.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
So I hope they last for long enough that you actually have a job for the rest of your career. But
thank you, Jeff.
Although again, magic
word, Swarthmore. So if I need a letter,
a lot of things quickly.
If I need a letter, don't forget to accidentally Swarthmore.
Hey, all I can say is I got when the getting was good. What could I say?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. And then the other thing, of course, is I was not all that. I mean, my undergraduate life was not as much fun as graduate school. But at some point, of course, the idea of living in a place. Right. I mean, the magic about the place is that here are a bunch of people who are earnestly working, for the most part, earnestly working on whatever it is that's really their thing to do. And to belong to a community of that sort is deeply inspiring. And you do make the sort of friends you don't make other places. And it's unlike any other time in your life. And so you don't want to lose that.
But again, you don't need, so I've got that. Let's build some what would be very nice dorm rooms sitting off in the woods somewhere in some really beautiful place, or sitting off downtown somewhere if that's what you're looking for, or whatever, and say, downtown. All right, what we're going to do is we are going to bring a cohort of people together, or a group of people together for a year or 2 years or however long the appropriate time is, so that they can be social, and so that they can do the club things, and so that they can interact, and so they can work on projects,
and seeing
and
and
then have them doing their
sign me up
in the way that we're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Right. Where do I get to go do that? That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you're somebody like Google,
right,
why doesn't Google let Google set up a thing like that where they're just bringing people in. They build some facility. They're bringing people in. You're going to live on the Google campus, and you're going to do all of this stuff, and you're going to be doing internships with folk in Google at the same time that you're doing all of this coursework. Some of it live courses, some of it, things that are already in the can, working with other good people, finding the best that the world has to offer. The people who would come out of something like that, I think, would probably be really kind of interesting people both interesting people and also interesting from the standpoint of Google.
And in the meantime, because we can't, because we can't get to the, at all levels, we have to actually start working on these online plans. The connections you would make, as we've been saying, would certainly go forward. And that would really improve your diversity right there. When you want to listen to people who have a different life experience than you do, that would be so much easier.
Yep. No, it would. It would. And we were talking about the virtual cohort thing. All right, let's take the what is the damned acronym for the things where you've got the massively online blah 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 blah, I forget what they're called. Let's take these things and let's do exactly what we were talking about before, where you set up cohorts. Some of those cohorts just being virtual, some of those cohorts being, all right, here's this group of people that is living together at this fun facility where they're, have somebody to drink beer with and do all the things that you're supposed to not be doing in college, that make college. And so now you have the virtual cohorts, and now you have, all right, we're going to go out into the community and we're going to ask someone who is an absolutely first-rate scientist or engineer or artist or historian or working in business or wherever, and say, okay, you don't have to put this course together, you don't have to teach this course, you don't have to do anything like that, but rather here is this group of half a dozen kids who are taking this course, and you're going to spend some amount of time just interacting with them and giving your thoughts and perspectives and answering questions and so on and so forth. Tell me that would not be a better learning experience for the kids than most college classes, that would be the kind of thing that an awful lot of professionals would jump at getting to do, because let's face it, interacting with college kids is actually kind of a fun thing.
It's true, and it's a lot more like some of the things that were the more fun about your upper division classes, which were small, about graduate school, where after a long day doing stuff, you would sit outside and go to a Perseid party and chat with professors, and those are the things that kind of made academic life particularly fun.
And for anyone out there who doesn't know, a Perseid party, there's nothing wrong with that. Perseids, there's a meteor shower called we're not talking about anything inappropriate.
Right.
Perseid party is code for the kind of things that they take you out and hang you for. So I just wanted to say
good
that.
Caveat.
Okay.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Glad to clarify that, indeed.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm in the midst of it, right? And there's a part of me that loves the traditional college experience. I just think it's going away. I just don't think it's a sustainable way of doing things. And I think the cohort proposal you have is very interesting. I think that's a great idea. I also can see the downside of this, and I think it always pays attention because when new technologies and new ways of doing things come into being, I think people like us look at all the possibilities and the positive ways. Wow, this is great. This is what we could do. And then there are people like the architects of Trump University, the entrepreneurs, the people who are like, wow, I can make a lot of profit at this. And I can also see where people in the guild of teaching and researching might worry, like, oh yeah, you know what? You could get, I mean, we're kind of doing it now where we get a really bright graduate student to teach a calculus class or things like that. And I can also, I think I see the potential and also worry about how this could go awry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I definitely do. There are certainly people who would step in and whatever you do, there are going to be such folk.
Yes,
but
agreed.
I'm going to come back though and say that, in talking about K-12 right now, we're saying, look, the K-12 as it once existed no longer exists. that it just doesn't. It's not just that it doesn't exist on August 27th or whenever you were going to open. It's not that just that it doesn't exist in the fall semester. It's that it no longer exists. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
That what emerges from this will be new. And so, look at it. How can we make the most of it? How can we do it as well as it can be done? I think the same thing is probably true of higher education. Part of that is COVID, but part of that is that an awful lot of higher education was already in a situation where its business model just didn't work. I mean, the business model of higher education has been failing for a long time now, which is why you look at, the University of California system, which is arguably the highest quality, state university system, public university system anywhere in a lot of respects. Boy, you don't really want to look too hard at what their bottom line is these days. Again, students are starting to revolt against this whole idea of having debts that they're never going to pay off, especially when it turns out that that's the one kind of debt that you cannot discharge as part of the bankruptcy, which
that's just crazy.
Wow.
And again, really... you're looking at that things are going in such a way that there's no such thing as saying, well, here is this degree, and if I do this degree, this prepares me for this thing that I'm going to do, because things are just changing too rapidly.
No one keeps the same job. I mean, and the jobs that are going to exist quite soon are not even ones we know a name for. So those are all true. Another thing I was going to say is on my son's campus, there was a lot of legitimate strike activity because the graduate students have responsibilities and don't have enough money to even live. I mean, even when they're crammed several in an apartment, the housing situation is so dire that they simply don't have enough.
Well, they're just preparing for life as adjunct faculty, right?
Yeah, that might be the point. Maybe that's
that really is a good point, Jerry. And I was going to say that in my case, I was lucky I had a wife with a full-time job. Yay, thank you, hon. But for most grad students, it's pretty pretty bad. And I think we have a model, part of the unsustainability of the model that you're talking about, Jeff, and I think, Jerry, you kind of, by mentioning the strike, allude to this, is that so much of instruction at universities now across the country depend or rest on the shoulders of adjunct faculty. I'm a well-paid lecturer. I'm not tenured, I'm not tenure track, but I'm at the top of probably the best treated lecturer you're going to get. But for adjuncts throughout the country, they're often paid very low wages, 40, 45, to teach, to do the bulk of the teaching, right? Especially for undergraduates. Jerry, was that your son's experience, or?
Yes. I mean, he's actually still an undergraduate. My eldest son has just started graduate school. He's doing LIGO, gravitational wave stuff, and black hole modeling, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And I hope he has enough to live on.
Right at the moment he does. He got a really good offer, and he's very lucky. It's from the University of Minnesota.
Nice.
Yeah. And of course that gets into a whole, that I'm not really going to bring up, but a whole separate set of questions of, all right, what does the research side of academia look like in the kind of model that we're talking about? But that's not a crazy thing to talk about either, because, let's face it, that the day when the research side of what a university does and the educational side of what a university does, those things have become increasingly decoupled over the years anyway.
Right.
Which is a terrible shame, because I think that's the one thing I'm most worried about. The one that's halfway through an undergraduate degree is he was just at the time where he was starting to enter a research group, but he's not established in one, and that's very hard to do online.
Well,
it's
but
impossible.
again, here now you have the student who, instead of I'm going to go to this university and do these things, and while I'm there, I'm going to work with this group. Why not say, all right, here's this group, and I'm going to go work with this group, and while I am working with this group, I am going to be part of this cohort that is doing, hey, I want to go work on LIGO, which is a gravity wave telescope, and another of those things that you don't go to the seedy side of the internet to find. I'm going to go work I'm going to work with a group doing LIGO, and I'm now going to take some courses from somebody like Susskind, and I'm going to take courses from Sean Carroll, and I'm going to take courses from whoever, and I'm going to be part of the I'm going to be part of the research group meetings, watching in for the people, the Virgo groups as well. That the possibilities for something like that are just kind of endless. If you can figure out a way, if you could figure out a way to do it, if you could figure out a way to make that model actually financially viable, which it has to be.
Yeah.
If you can figure out a way to put the social emotional into that, just like we're talking about trying to put the social emotional into K-12. But it's all going to look, 5 years from now, we're going to look back on what education at all levels looked like prior to 2020. And, it will be some faint memory from back in the before times.
And a great deal of attention needs to be put on making sure that people aren't left behind in it. And I know that's an overused phrase, but we really do mean that people have to, it's not just a matter of having some access, it's a matter of knowing how to use it. And so once again, cohorts could be very useful. I would definitely love to learn more about, as it happens, I do actually know a lot about wiring, but I'm going to use that as an example. You could have somebody that's really good at those sort of things, somebody who plays the harp, somebody who knows the technology of, loves gadgetry. If you group people together, then one of the things I find about school, that my children's school, that bothers me is its competitive nature. So that a child who's doing well at one thing is not actually looked upon as an asset to the classroom. They're more looked upon as a rival to what everybody else is doing in the classroom. And that's not at all the way it should be. It's not the way on a sports team. If you have a brilliant pitcher, everybody's happy. So it does seem that we could build a slightly less competitive test. Especially, maybe you have to do assessment tests eventually, but assessment tests within the classroom, I think, are too adversarial. And the ability, if you make a mistake, it's on your record. That's weird. You're supposed to make a mistake when you learn something.
If you don't make a mistake, how do you learn? One of my best physics professors, besides Jeff Hester, was a guy named Kevin Schmidt. And one of the great pieces of advice that Kevin, and Jerry, I don't know if you had Kevin for a class.
No, I didn't take too many classes there.
He taught Jackson E&M, which you can imagine.
That's
such a wonderful experience. And he would give us take-home tests and homework assignments, and he just assumed we would work together on these things. And at some point, it was clear we weren't. And he finally said, guys, you're not competing with each other. You're competing with people from Champaign-Urbana or Berkeley or Cambridge or somewhere else, right? If you're competing with anybody at all. So you either come out of this class understanding this material or you don't, and trying to work in your little desk by yourself and master spherical Bessel functions is a sure way to go insane. And it was a much healthier philosophy in that classroom. And I think that was a kind of a breaking point. That was a very important inflection point in that class.
Yeah, I think it's really important because I had the luck of getting that occasionally in my math classes in high school, where it was, we just had somebody that had been on the Manhattan Project, Dr. Jenkins, and he made it a really interactive experience. And that's how I based what I wanted out of university. A lot of people get that, say, from the arts, because that's one of those situations where you're not against anyone. You're doing something wonderful that you simply cannot do by yourself. You need other people to interact with.
There's another aspect of all of this, and that is one of the things that has long bothered me, and this goes way back, is the total disconnect between what education looks like and what actually living your life looks like after that.
Yeah.
And especially if you look at where, if you look at where living your life after school is going these days, the kinds of modes of interaction that we're talking about here, the kinds of flexibility in the direction you take things, the being able to learn and respond and change direction based upon what's actually going on around you, that what we are now talking about sounds to me a lot more like the lives that people are going to be living.
Yeah.
And so the idea, again, social emotional, the idea of education, K-12 into higher education, off into the world, actually being something that is preparing you for life in some meaningful way.
It also occurs to me that even, you know, I have one child in particular that's sitting all day in one place is not really a great thing. So so the more you can break things up into that fits somebody's you know, ability to sit and concentrate on one thing and then go run around and do work of other nature and come back. That is actually another way that more people will have academic success, because they're not being forced into a model where you must sit quietly and have a particular attitude looking on your face all the time. You know, and not roll your eyes because you heard something that just, it's like, God, what are they saying? You know, and that gets you into trouble. Well, you can, you know,
and an education system that will allow people to sleep in class.
Yes, you should indeed demand that.
Jeff, you interrupted my important nap time.
If I want to
You're oppressing me
in class, I'm going to sleep through my ISM class. That brought to mind, though, there was an absolutely great meme, you know, back in the spring, talking about opening schools. And, you know, here's this group at a university getting together and talking about, okay, how can we open schools? And we can't let everybody in. And somebody says, well, I've been doing this modeling, and it turns out that if we just find people who are connected in such a way that, you know, they're not really social people, and what they're doing, they're going to spend all of their time just sitting around in rooms alone anyway, then we can do it. And yeah, that works. And then the final frame is somebody saying, you know, all right, they're going to reopen the computer science department.
Well, guys, thank you for letting me crash your. I have to go feed the cat.
Thank you for crashing. It's probably about time for us to bail, because we've been
all right.
at it.
Jerry, it was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. I've seen your name online.
Yeah, it's not true. I'm not guilty. I wasn't there. I wasn't in Portland snatching people off the streets.
No, you weren't. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
All right.
Anyway, take care, guys. I will end the stream. So here we go. YouTube world, however much of it is left out there. Take care. We'll see you next time. Next week, we'll see what next week brings. All right. Take care, Jerry.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.